Hey, in today's episode of the McTaggart Attack podcast, I, Kevin McTaggart, am going to be attacking myself, I guess, in a matter of speaking. Not really myself, but I had an enlightening moment today. And anytime I have an enlightening moment, I think, that's a podcast episode. That's definitely a podcast episode. It's got to be a podcast episode. I do episodes 5 days a week now, Monday through Friday, so got to come up with something. A lot of times, I'd be in my car, hitting the record button on my phone and not knowing what I was going to say. But now, I'm recording it in my room, my home office, if you will, with my podcast microphone and my computer, and I'm like, I gotta be a little bit more professional here, and think that I know what I'm going to say before I actually start the damn podcast. And today's episode, like I said, I want to talk about an epiphany, an enlightening moment, a come to Jesus moment. Not necessarily a come to Jesus moment, but definitely an enlightening moment. That's for sure. So there. But because I listened to a couple podcasts from different people the past couple days, and I heard, because once you go and listen to podcasts, it's like you listen to one and then you hear a guest that they have and you're like, oh, I like this guest, and then you start listening to their podcast, and then they have a guest and you start listening to their podcast, and it's like this whole podcast black hole that you fall into and you can never get out of, and it's just so exasperating sometimes that you have to come up for air and listen to music. For God's sakes, how old-fashioned is that? Who listens to music anymore? Everybody just listens to podcasts now. So anyway, it's just it's been an enlightening moment today, because my problem is, I'll give you my problem first before I talk about this podcast that helped me out. And my problem is that I think and wonder too much, wondering what my destiny is. I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. I question what I'm going to do with my life, and I'm trying to figure out how to do the entrepreneur thing, and it's just really frustrating sometimes because I don't have any of the answers of what am I going to do with my life? What's my life going to lead to? And I was listening to this podcast the other day, and I want to get that out for you, get that information out for you, figure out who that one podcast was, and then we'll lead to the other one. The podcast I was listening to is the Paid to Be Me podcast by Hayden Humphrey, and he had a guest on his podcast called, his name is Case Kenny, and his podcast is called New Mindset, Who Dis? And I was enthralled by his podcast because it's just him talking about stuff for 15 to 20 minutes. Sound familiar? It was great to find another podcast where it's just one person talking for 20 minutes. I thought it was just me and Bill Burr, to be honest. And this other podcast. I don't think she does it anymore. It's called Shameless Sellout with Savannah Barajas, but I think she's strictly on OnlyFans now, and I'm not that interested in that, so I unsubscribed from her podcast. Where's my water? My water. It's over here on the bed. Just want to bring that up because, anyway, had to get my water, sorry. Because I want my voice to sound clear and concise to you all, so I don't want to have a scratchy voice for the whole podcast, because you'll think something is wrong with me. I mean, besides the normal stuff, you'll think I'm sick or something. I mean, like, physically sick, but not coronavirus sick, Anyway. So I was listening to his podcast, and the first one I listened to of his dealt with those questions that I ask myself constantly. And he gave some good advice. Like, instead of, you can listen to his podcast. I've already talked about it. I will share both of those podcasts in the show notes, as it were. But, he suggests, when I ask, what am I going to do with my life, or how am I going to be successful, how am I going to be successful, stuff like that. He says to change the question, what am I willing to do to be successful? I'm asking a question to anything and not having the answers, but, when I ask it, what am I willing to do to be successful, I'm making myself answer my own question. And that's great advice. That helps. That does help. That just changing the wording. It's amazing how just changing the wording, just changes everything. And I felt a lot better with that. And it sort of helped me stop worrying about the future, because I do worry about the future. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I shouldn't worry about what I'm going to do with my life. I should just worry about now and what I can do. And that's it. I can only worry about now, because what I do now does influence the future. So I shouldn't really worry about what I'm going to do. And it's just I need to focus on what I like to do. That's what I want to do. I like writing jokes. I like being a stand-up comedian. I like writing jokes. I like coming up with jokes. And some people might think of that as hard work, or they could never do that, but I like doing that. And because I've been thinking about various side gigs to do, and quite frankly, it's really nothing that's interesting. I've sort of thought about being a virtual assistant or something, because I do like to do the spreadsheet type stuff, either bookkeeping sort of, or spreadsheets. And that's interesting to me, but I'm also interested in creating jokes and stuff, because that's one thing I got from both of those guys' podcasts. Because Hayden's podcast had another guest on there, but I can't remember his name, but he was talking about entrepreneurs. Your business should be whatever you love to do, or whatever's difficult, but you love to do it. What other people would think is boring, but you love to do it. Not necessarily boring, but just stuff that they don't have time for is what you should do. And I was very enlightened by listening to both of those podcasts. And it's just I just need to figure, I'm a comedian, and I just need to worry about writing jokes. I've written a little bit during this pandemic, but mostly I've been worrying about my future. I think a lot of us do. But I do definitely want to write. I'm going to focus on writing more material instead of focusing on these side gigs these potential side gigs that I'm not even that interested in. The only gig that I'm interested in and making money off of, well, two actually, is being a comedian and podcasting. And I should just focus on those things, because those are things that I like to do. I want to enhance my podcasting. I want to start having guests on the podcast. So that's in the future. I just have to figure out how to do that, but it's not hard. And like with comedian, like quite frankly, I've hated most of my material, and I just need to take the time to reboot it, remaster it, just go at it again. I just need to work on my material. That's really what I want to do. And I need to put away all those other distractions. I need to stop getting stuck in the YouTube videos black hole, much like the self-help black hole. The YouTube and self-help black hole is even worse because it's combined. You have the YouTube black hole and the self-help black hole, and then you have the YouTube self-help black hole, which is all of that. It's just ridiculous, and I just need to focus on what I love to do. Focus on what you love to do. I think that's what the podcast title, Focus on What You Love to Do, is the podcast title for today's podcast. I love how I come up with the titles during the podcast. I thought of something else, but no, it's just, you just have to focus on what you love to do. That's sort of what I've gleaned from these podcasts, and don't focus on the future so much, because the future hasn't happened yet. So why should I focus on the future? I just need to focus on now. And I feel so much better now, and I hope you do too. And I hope you found this episode entertaining, enlightening, motivating, educational, informative. I hope you found it something. So please feel free, or please subscribe, share, like, and review. And I would be very grateful for that. That's right, I said grateful. I say grateful now. It's really fucked up. Anyway, that's the bottom line. If you smell what the McTaggart Attack podcast is cooking.